Welcome to Gen Z Hoops, the Gen Z basketball, coaching, and sports business show.
All right, here we go. Salute to Knicks Nation, CP the Fanchise here. Hope you guys are doing well on this Tuesday afternoon. I have here with me Ashton Khoorchand. He is the host of Gen Z Hoops, and Ashton is actually going to be a student at the Sports Business Classroom this summer out in Las Vegas during Las Vegas Summer League. As I mentioned to you guys before, I'll be teaching the media and broadcasting program, or one of the teachers in the media and broadcasting program there at the Sports Business Classroom, and that is organized by ESPN front office insider Bobby Marks and Eric Pincus as well. So I'm going to actually be a guest on Ashton's podcast on Gen Z Hoops. And so, Ashton, I'll let you take it away, man.
CP, thank you so much for coming on my show today and giving me the opportunity to speak on your platform as well. Today, as CP just stated, he is the creator and host of Knicks Fan TV, as well as the NBA Report, and host of NBA Radio on Sirius XM and WFAN in New York. So before we jump into our little conversation about like your career and what you do for Knicks Fan TV as well, can you talk a little bit about your connection to the game of basketball?
Yeah, so my connection to the game started as a kid, as a Knicks fan and just watching Knicks games as a youngster. It used to be on NBC, and it looks like it's going to return to NBC, and just watching the Knicks play against the legendary, Michael Jordan and those Bulls teams, the Pacers, the Miami Heat. And in those days, as an early just viewer of the game, I just used to watch how hard they played, how tough they played. And when they would be at home at Madison Square Garden, how loud and electric the building felt. And so I just always knew as a kid, I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to root for that team, especially when they lost, because, when they played the Chicago Bulls, they would lose quite often to Michael Jordan and the Bulls. And so I always wanted to see them win because, I always believed in that team. And so in those early days, that's kind of what got me into the game. I played as a kid. I've always been around the game. And so, much later on in my life, I started Knicks Fan TV to cover the team.
Yeah, most definitely. I can actually agree with that. Growing up in Queens, like New York Knicks, they're really big. They're really big and like have that effect on your life, as well as like growing up and like being connected to the game of basketball. I actually started watching basketball around like the Lynn Sanity time of things, when Lynn Sanity took New York by storm. And like actually I have Carmelo up on the wall back there.
Hey.
So like growing up watching those teams, like like there were a lot of heartbreaks there. Like especially that Roy Hibbert block in 2013. Like that still gives me flashbacks, especially from that Eastern Conference semis that we just played the Pacers that round. But it's really good to see, like, from my perspective, like how the Knicks have like turned their franchise around in the last couple of years, and with Jalen Brunson at the helm. So getting back to your career, at what point in your life did you know that you wanted to pursue a career in media?
Well, kind of recent. This platform in Knicks Fan TV is about, we are in year 7 now, but I just saw an opportunity to create something bigger and something better than what was out there. I felt like the discourse around the Knicks was very limited to just off-season hot stove rumors or the latest scandal that was going on around the team, which there was a lot of nonsense going on with the team just about 10 years ago or so. But I just felt like even the local coverage was very limited. You would get a post-game show and then that's it. But behind that team is a very passionate fan base that wants to talk about the team, no matter how good or how bad they were at the time. And so I wanted to give the fans not just an opportunity to discuss the team, the news, the rumors, and the transactions, but also to have their voice be heard, because it just seemed to be drowned out over the years. And so that's why we started Knicks Fan TV.
Yeah, most definitely. Actually, my best friend, he's like the biggest Knicks fan that I know, Michael Allers. When I told him I was having you on my podcast, he was like, "No way, you got CP. Oh my God, I follow his page. I listen to like all his videos online and stuff like that." And like he like agrees with like most of your takes actually. And like he follows all like these Knicks fan pages on Instagram, Twitter. So like he keeps me up to date, because like I'm actually not a Knicks fan. I'm a Miami Heat fan, but like I really agree with the team. Sorry about that. I'm sorry
No
for your
apologies
viewers.
needed,
I'm
man. No
sorry about
apologies
that.
needed. That
But I got
name
covered.
just brings about a lot of just a lot of anxiety, man. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. But yeah, like you guys as fans, like the Knicks fans, like they really run New York. I remember my friend, he actually like talked a lot about like the clash of the boroughs, Brooklyn and the New York Knicks. Can you talk a little bit about like your experience about that time when Kyrie and KD were over there and
Yeah.
how like Brooklyn was trying to like kind of like be like kind of like an uprising a little bit and like try and take New York from the Knicks?
Yeah, it was an interesting time because the that year preceding the off season, all the rumors were that these two guys were coming to the Knicks. And given the state of the franchise at that time, I was excited about the prospects of getting KD and Kyrie and finally bringing the franchise back to prominence and respectability and ultimately winning a championship. And I remember getting ready for my free agency show that off season and excited about, just finally this day is going to come where the announcement's going to be made that these guys are going to sign with the Knicks. And all of a sudden seeing Kevin Durant's Instagram announcement, and it was a Brooklyn post
Yeah.
with the Notorious B.I.G. in the background. And I was so mad. I was so dejected doing that show. It's still up on my channel right now. And it made me, I never really thought much of the New Jersey Nets or the Brooklyn Nets at that time. But once they got there, I was tight. I was heated, man. And so, when they would have those Battle of the Borough games, the Knicks didn't win many of those games because the Nets were good. But as we see, those two guys kind of tanked that franchise, and they're still trying to recover. So at the end, the Knicks and the Knicks fans got the last laugh.
Yeah, I totally agree. Actually, like I remember from that summer as well, there was a lot of speculation that the Knicks were going to get the #1 pick. I believe that was the RJ Barrett
Zion,
draft,
yeah, yeah.
Zion. But like everyone thought, like, oh my God, we're going to get Zion Williamson, Kyrie and Katie are going to come, and it's going to be like the start of this whole dynasty. But I can't agree. Like the Nets franchise like really did tank, and like the Knicks got the last laugh because now Jalen Brunson with that huge signing over, I believe it was 2 off seasons ago when he
Oh,
signed
yeah,
that deal.
yeah.
What was your reaction when because I know a lot of Knicks fans were like, oh my God, why are we giving Jalen Brunson like all this money? Were you excited about giving him that contract in that time?
I didn't think the contract was a big deal, but going back to the draft, when the Knicks had punted in that draft, I had disagreed with the process, the thought process, skipping a draft pick when this team
Right.
needed talent to get a guy like a Jalen Brunson. I did not see a superstar in him. I saw a good point guard, someone who would be reliable, someone who would be a steady presence for this team and certainly help, but I did not see him being the all-star, making his first all-star team this year and really being a top 10 player, I believe, in the league, especially this year. And so the contract wasn't a big deal, but Jalen Brunson certainly took this city and this league by surprise because I don't think there was anybody but him that believed that he would be what he's been to the New York Knicks so far in these 2 years.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree with that. There's been a lot of talk actually about him being like a 1A guy or a 1B guy. What do you think he is? Do you think like you bring someone else in to be that 1A guy and have Brunson as the 1B?
Yeah.
Or do you think he's your 1A guy and then you bring in someone else to complement him as the 1B?
Well, I think the 1A, 1B conversation, it's a bit outdated just in the way that where the league is going and how you have to structure teams.
Right.
There's no more Jordan-led teams. There's no more LeBron-led teams.
Depth.
Like you do need two superstars. I do believe that, but you also need a lot of depth behind
Right.
them. I believe that Jalen Brunson can be a player that you can win a championship with, but I also believe that the Knicks need a co-star with him. Now, is Julius Randle that guy? It's left to be seen. We'll have to see. During the regular season, he certainly puts up numbers, but his postseason production
Right.
has left a lot to be desired. And so the question still remains: does Jalen Brunson have a competent co-star with him to lead this team to prominence? But Jalen Brunson is certainly a building block towards that.
Yeah, most definitely. So I mean we'll get into the off season later on in the interview,
Sure.
but I like to focus more on like your seven-year run of running Knicks Fan TV. So like over the 7 years, when you look back at where you started and where you are today, what comes to mind?
Well, first and foremost, it's consistency. It's consistency because, especially now, when you look, this is the TV. but this is also your camera, and this is your pathway to creating content. And
Right.
everybody can do it. There is no barrier to entry anymore. And it's becoming harder and harder to be seen, be recognized, and to build something sustainable. But with consistency, you can certainly get there. You have to be willing to work every day. You have to be willing to be persistent. There's going to be nights where you may get 2 people watching. There's going to be nights where you might get 100, but you have to keep going. And if you can stay consistent, then you know that you've truly tapped into your passion. And so consistency is one thing. We can't get to where we are without putting in the work on a daily basis. And then additionally, it's the support from the fans. It's been our support from the fans because, I told you I had that hypothesis early that we have a passionate fan base that we have not tapped into in terms of giving them the content that they deserve and allowing them to have their voices heard. And so through the years, the fan support globally has really paid dividends here on the platform. And it's to the point now where I travel to different cities. Like this year, for example, we went to Los Angeles, sold out venue, during NFL playoffs, right? We bring Knicks fans in there in Los Angeles to watch the Knicks versus Memphis Grizzlies. Jalen Brunson's not even playing, and we've got over 200 people packing this place out. We went to Miami, we went to Philadelphia, and it's the same thing. You run into diehard Knicks fans. You run into a lot of fans that have been with you on the journey. And then you run into fans who share their testimonials with you in terms of what the channel has meant to them and how much we've brought them closer to the team no matter where they are. And so those have been some of the most valuable things we've taken away over the journey, the course of the journey.
Yeah, most definitely. Actually, my mentor, John Hartophilus, talks to me about consistency all the time. He's the founder, and he's the one who started Gen Z Hoops before he passed it down to me. He works in the NBA now for all their Phantom cams and stuff like that. But he always tells me got to keep reaching out to people every day. Got to keep sending out those emails and keep putting out the content, because if you stop and make it inconsistent, then some people will forget about your show. Then viewers won't tune in as much anymore. So I can testify to that as well, that that's a true thing, and being a content creator and working in media as well. So
I would say if you do stop, it means you're not really passionate about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you are passionate about something, you have to have a almost maniacal vision and drive towards accomplishing your goals. And, these 7 years, it's been tough, but it never seems like work for me. And that's why I can put in long hours. I can work day after day after day, night after night, and still be happy with what I'm doing. And the results will speak for themselves.
Yeah, of course. So as I've stated before, you're also the host of NBA Radio on Sirius XM and WFAN in New York. Can you talk a little bit about your experiences with both of these positions?
Sure. So from a Sirius XM on NBA Radio, this opportunity came about, and this is another thing that we can point to in terms of some of the keys is relationships. Relationships. A lot of the keys to life can apply to a lot of different things, including creating content. Because one of the things that I said when I first started this channel to a former host of this platform was that you never know who's watching.
Right.
And that's why you have to stay consistent. You just never know who's on the other side of that camera, who's watching and supporting you. And that person for me, who's become a big time mentor of mine, a big time champion of the platform, is Chuck D, the rhyme animal Chuck D of the legendary Public Enemy rap group. He's been a cultural icon for us. And for me, Chuck D has been an ardent supporter for me. He was the one that connected me to ESPN, that got me onto the Max Kellerman show for 8 weeks. He was the one that connected me to Steve Cohen, who was then the sports program and director for Sirius XM, letting Steve know, hey, I got this guy here. He's hungry, he's passionate, he's talented. Let's give him a shot. And so when you continue to put good work out there and create value, there's going to be people who want to genuinely see you win. And that's who he's been to me. So he was the one that connected me to Sirius XM and NBA Radio. And, that opportunity was fantastic because it's a change of pace to podcasting. It's a different format. It's a different style. you're working with a different host who you have to build a different cadence with and understand, when to get in, when to jump in, and when to give your input and when to throw it over to them. So it's a completely different platform, but it's very valuable experience. So, NBA radio was one of those big stepping stones for this platform. And then for WFAN here in New York, this is where sports radio, sports talk started.
Wow.
It started here with a show called Mike and the Maddog. This is way before your time. This is way before your time, before you even born. But that show, when you look at First Take and all these shows where everybody's yapping back and forth, never would have been possible without Mike and the Maddog. They started it, and that was my entry into sports talk. And how I became so passionate about it was listening to them and listening to how they would build relationships with their fans. Every day you would get the same callers every day, and their banter back and forth. I loved it. I loved it. And it was what would get me through my days, similar to what we do to people. And so, I got that opportunity. They had reached out. The former program director, Spike Eskin, at the time had reached out and based on seeing my platform on Knicks Fan TV saying, hey, I think you would be good here. And they gave me my opportunity. And so that was another valuable experience along the journey.
Wow, that's amazing. So I don't mean to go off on the tangent here, but I like when I was in middle school, like we would always watch like First Take and like all these shows, Undisputed, and we'd all sit at like the lunch tables and like have those little debates. Did
Yeah.
Mike and the Mad Dog have that same like what do you call it, like effect on you growing up as a kid as well?
No question about it. Just like you, me and my friends would always debate about different sports, especially in New York, because it's a sports town. So we would talk about the Knicks and talk about the Yankees and the Giants and Jets, and always just have these ferocious debates. So those were, they kind of started that for us. And that was kind of the inspiration to me starting Knicks Fan TV. And that's why for our post-game show, we have callers call in. And you can call in via the phone line or you can call in via the Discord. Only difference is now we have fans calling in from all over the world. So you can have fans calling in not just from New York, but maybe in LA, maybe in, we had fans calling in from Japan, from Vietnam, from Israel, from London. And so now we're as we are a more connected community globally, we have the capability technology wise to have our fans from around the world have their voice heard.
Oh, that's amazing. So you've been featured on many platforms such as ESPN, Bleacher Report, and even the Fat Joe Show. How does it feel to be featured on these shows?
It's great because it just further, validates what you do and the value that you present to your audience. So it's a great experience. We've been with Bleacher Report now for about 2 years. The Fat Joe connection, another person that the Rhyme Animal Chuck D had connected me with, and he's a guy now who, when he wants to talk about Knicks, he'll shoot me a DM. Hey, what do you think about this? Hey, this is a great idea. This is a great post by you, and so we've developed a relationship from there. ESPN Max Kellerman show, that was another stepping stone, another milestone in the journey, because the first episode, it was when Max was on First Take, he was kind of the anti-fan. He
Yeah.
would always trash the Knicks, and Knicks fans every day on Twitter would be just clowning him and just so angry. And so when I got that opportunity to debate him and square off with him, it was kind of the representation for the fans versus the anti-fan, and we would spar back and forth. We did that for about 2 or 3 episodes, and then after that, he really respected my work, really respected my opinions. And it became more, hey, let's talk about the NBA in general. And so for those 8 to 10 weeks, I had a weekly spot on the Max Kellerman show. We would cover not just the Knicks, but the entire NBA. And so that was kind of, when I started the NBA report, that was also a moment where it allowed me to kind of pivot away from just Knicks content to also covering the league at large.
Wow, that's amazing. I remember when Max was on First Take, like in that summer where like the Knicks didn't get Kyrie and Katie, he like gave like a Julius Randle taped jersey to Stephen A, and he poured like the glass like half empty. I remember that was like a clip. Like all my friends, they were like clowning him for that, like making fun of him. But like Max is actually like one of my like he was mainly the reason why I used to watch First Take because
Yeah.
like him and Stephen A, like those debates used to get so heated. I feel like it's it's still a good show now, but I don't think it's the same without Max, because now they had Big Perk in there with the three of them. That dynamic was
Yeah.
amazing, I thought.
And I like Big Perk, but it's certainly different. But the thing about Max is, even though on TV it was more of a character and people were against him on that, as a person and as a professional, he also took a liking to me because he saw his journey in my own. You know, Max Kellerman, you may not be familiar, but Max Kellerman started on public access television covering the sport of boxing.
Right.
And so even though content creation was a little bit different and you had less platforms in the early 90s, he started from the grassroots. He started out the mud and ultimately made his way to ESPN. And so, you know, he saw that journey and brought me along for the ride on the Max Kellerman show.
Wow, that's amazing. So, as we've stated before, that you're going to be an instructor at Sports Business Classroom at NBA Summer League in Las Vegas. What are you looking forward to most about being an instructor at SBC?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing, especially for me, is to start giving back and start giving out the gems that I've learned over the course of the journey, the trials and tribulations, the good times, the bad times, the hard times, and helping students like you guys create your own path and create your own brand. And so one of the topics of the media and broadcasting, I think on the Monday, is building a brand. And so that's a topic that we're certainly going to be spearheading. It's going to be myself, Nikias Duncan, and Steve Jones, those guys on the Dunker Spot, and their show is currently on JJ Redick's Old Man and Three podcast network. So really just dishing out the gems based on the lessons that I've learned along my journey, and hoping that will inspire you guys and help you guys along with yours, right? Like before we started the show, I was kind of helping you. I say, hey, tilt your camera this way to kind of, you had a little space there between your head and the top of the room. So just tilt your camera down so you kind of cut off that area so we have a more clear cut view. So things like that, helping me be more camera ready, building your brand, so on and so forth. So I'm very much looking forward to that opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for that as well, by the way. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, getting into the fandom aspect of the interview, I've been waiting for this part of it. So I like to start off by asking you, like, there's been many eras of Knicks basketball over like the years, as there are with like every NBA team and every era in the NBA. What was your favorite era of Knicks basketball as a fan?
90s.
90s.
90s. It was their most successful time, but as a young fan who was impressionable at the time, that was when I really got into the sport and got into the team, because when they would go up against their rivals, it was totally, the outcome was totally unscripted. But whether it was a thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, like you felt that. You felt that for days. You felt the energy in Madison Square Garden through your TV. You felt it through your interactions with your family. I mean, so many of my family members at that time were just diehard Knicks fans as well, would always follow the team. And so, that's what really got me into that Knick team. The rivalries with Jordan and the Bulls and Reggie Miller and the Pacers, the brawls with your Miami Heat. If you go back into the archives, the PJ Brown, Charlie Ward brawl, because Pat Riley left the Knicks and made a carbon copy of the Knicks in Miami. I mean, look, they have a great book out. My guy, Chris Herring, wrote, and it's called Blood in the Garden, about the 90s Knicks, but you could literally have made a movie about that or a documentary about that, and they are going to do that. So that was the era for me, man. And it was an era where the game was more physical than it is now. They allowed things they gave the guys more leeway in terms of fouls and things of that nature. Right. So to me, it was an interesting brand of basketball to get into.
Yeah, most definitely. I actually remember hearing Pat Riley talk about that in one of his interviews. Like, I remember like his first game back at the Garden, like the crowd was letting them hear, and he went like straight to like on the court and was like kind of like egging them on a little bit about that. I don't know if you recall that moment, but
oh, absolutely. When he came back, we hated him because he left like a coward. He faxed in his resignation to the team. And so we were sour about that. I remember when he came back, he was booed. It was a classic villain story in any type of, movie or TV show. So I definitely remember it like it was yesterday.
If I'm being honest, like if I had to say like my favorite era of Knicks basketball, I would have to say like that that era with Carmelo Anthony, J.R. Smith, Shumpert. You had Steve Novak with the belt going like that. Um, that was the team like that, like kind of got me into basketball. But like my whole family, they're all Miami Heat fans. They love Dwayne Wade and like LeBron and all that era. So like my mom would like kind of turn on the game one day, and then I just like kind of got brainwashed. Let's say brainwashed from that perspective. But moving on, who is your favorite New York Knick of all time?
There's many, man. Carmelo's certainly one of them, but to go back to that '90s era, it was Patrick Ewing. Definitely Patrick Ewing, because he was a guy who, I'm Jamaican. My family's from Jamaica. He's a Jamaican, so we rooted for him and wanted him to see him win. And we came so close in '94 to winning that championship. I was heartbroken that he finished his career without winning a championship. But when Patrick Ewing, you saw a guy who he represented us as New Yorkers, as Jamaicans, as, just a hardworking, lunch pail guy, super talented. I mean, Patrick Ewing was seen as one of the greatest basketball players ever. And so, especially on the college scene and in the NBA, he was one of the top 50 greatest, top 75 now. But he left it all out there. He left it all out there. And later on in his career, you would see how much he carried this team because he would have so much ice bags on his knees. He had so many injuries. And that was the first superstar where I saw how later on in his career, the fans kind of turned on him. That was the first time when I saw the pressure of winning a championship in New York, how it can really tear you down.
Right.
And I saw that. He was one of our guys. He was our heroes, but he left the Knicks in a time of, it was just not amicable. The fans turned on him, and now everybody's blaming him because he couldn't take us to the promised land. And so it was an ugly time. So that was the first time I really saw how tough it is to see a superstar player ultimately go from being a hero to being villainized almost within his own fan base.
I mean, we kind of see that nowadays as well. Like it happened to Carmelo all those years ago. Now it's even happened to like Julius Randle. I remember like last year when they lost in the playoffs, like people were like knocking down like his like figurine like outside of Madison Square Garden that they put
Yeah.
up, and
Yeah.
him like putting like the thumbs down to the crowd like that one time. I do believe like when you play for like these such big markets like the Lakers, the Knicks, even the Celtics, like like these fans are like so like used to like that winning. Like the expectation is to win a championship. It's not to like compete, not to just compete, not to just make the playoffs. No, it's to win. Like these big markets want to win. So like to be the guy on the team, like you're expected and held to that standard, like take the team to the promised land at the end of the day, I believe.
Yeah, and it's why Jalen Brunson is so perfect for this city and for this town, because he has the mental makeup to be able to handle pressure and to hold himself accountable. Now, he's still in a honeymoon phase here with New York. He just finished up year 2. Soon enough, he's going to get a major, major contract.
Right.
And each year, the expectations are going to go higher and higher and higher. And so we'll see when his time comes how the fans are going to react when, if and when they don't meet those expectations. But you have to have that mental makeup to survive here in New York, because back in Patrick Ewing's time, there was no social media. There wasn't a Twitter that these guys check every day. What they had was just the local newspapers every day, the local radio stations, and it was easier to tune those things out. But now in this 24/7 news cycle where everybody has an opinion, everybody has a reaction, it's harder to get away from the noise. So it's going to be interesting to see how he handles it later on in his Knick career.
Yeah, I totally agree. So reflecting on this past season for the Knicks, what comes to mind?
Stellar season. Super proud of the effort, the fight from this team, because I labeled this postseason as against all odds. They lost Julius Randle. They lost Mitchell Robinson early in the season for 50 games. He comes back. They lose him again. They lose OG Anunoby in the Pacers series. They lost Bojan Bogdanovic in the Philadelphia 76ers series. And yet and still, the Knicks still mustered enough strength and depth to push through and make it to the second round. And I think that was a commendable feat by them, because I always look at the playoffs as an endurance test. It's not just about how talented your team is, how good you are. Once you get to 82 and beyond, game 82 and beyond, it's how do you feel physically? Can you push through physically and mentally to win games when guys are playing much harder? The scouting report has been out on you all year, and so the team knows the moves that you're going to make. Now it's about executing. Can you execute when your body's feeling weary, when your mind is feeling weary, and sometimes you might be in hostile environments, whether you're at home or on the road? But this Knicks team, led by Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, Hartstein, I mean, these guys just stuck together, rallied around each other, and I thought they gave a good fight, man, all the way to the end in Game 7 against Indiana.
Yeah, most definitely. So that come like the fact that you bring up like how durable are you for the playoffs? Does that comes to mind? Like what comes to mind for me is that like a lot of people like have the issue with Tom Thibodeau playing like his starters like so many minutes like during the regular season. From your perspective, would you rather him like not take it so hard on his starters in the regular season so they have like so then they can go out and play like 48 minutes in the postseason?
I don't think you can predict with injuries, if you give a guy less now, will he be fresh later? I don't see it. I don't see a direct correlation with the minutes and the injuries. Some fans may disagree, but I didn't see it. We heard Josh Hart on the Pivot podcast talk about, hey, listen, I want to play. And if I want to sit, I'll raise my hand and sit. It's a players' league. The players have the freedom to control their minutes for the most part. And so for Tom Thibodeau, yeah, it's the pressure to win here in New York. The Knicks went out there and they got the number 2 seed. Once they lost players, you didn't have much options at the end of your rotation. There's only but so many good players you're going to have on a team. They at one point they had 11 able, capable, healthy bodies that if they would have went into the playoffs at full strength, they would have had a great chance to go all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals and, hey, maybe even beyond. But once you lose 4 prominent players in your rotation, you're down to basically these 7 or 8 guys that can help you get the job done and win. The playoffs is a different animal. It's not the regular season. It's not summer league. It's not the preseason. This is a high stakes money game. You want to win. You want to win games and ultimately be rewarded for your performance after that. So I don't necessarily blame him for the injuries that this team had sustained this year. It was a situation of tough luck for most of these guys, and we'll just have to see what happens going forward.
Oh yeah, I'm not holding anything against Tom Thibodeau at the end of the day. I feel like a lot of fans just like hold that grudge against him because of his track record all those years ago with Derrick Rose and like why was he in the game at that point because they were up like so much. So like just to have like this like tragedy happen this year for the Knicks, I feel like they're just blaming it on him at the end of the day, a lot of these fans. But for like you guys actually like a lot of these guys like staying ready at the end of the bench. Like look at Alec Burks. He came in, he was giving great minutes, a lot of versatility on the 3-point line, getting to the mid range, even the floater, really is scoring on all 3 levels for the team. So I feel like he was a really good plus in that situation because he wasn't even in the rotation at one point, right?
Yeah, well, when he came back to the Knicks, he was, and then he just was terrible. I've been a big Alec Burks supporter, but I can tell you, I won't lie to you when I say he was terrible here for the Knicks when he got back. And so I thought Tom Thibodeau made the right decision of taking him out of the rotation. But when they had their backs up against the wall, especially in the Pacers series, and they needed to insert some more depth into the rotation, he came through and delivered. He was one of the best players for them in that Pacers series. And so it's a testament to who he is, the type of basketball player that he is, and a very well-respected member of that locker room. A lot of those Knicks players, swear by Burks' leadership and the camaraderie in that locker room. He added to that chemistry, and I think that helped push them forward, whether he was playing or not.
Yeah, most definitely. So going forward for the offseason now, what are your predictions for the Knicks offseason?
Yeah, well, this is going to be a very big offseason for the Knicks. I think their priorities, first and foremost, I think the first thing that they're going to do is sign Tom Thibodeau to a contract extension. He's entering into the final year of his of his contract, and by all accounts, it seems like he's going to get rewarded and ultimately get an extension. I think that will happen this summer. Second order of business, the Knicks need to get Isaiah Hartenstein under a contract extension. As of today's recording, there are thoughts that the OKC Thunder could be a team that may slip under the radar and could sign Isaiah Hartenstein. And the issue is that there are other teams like OKC, like the Spurs, like the Magic, who can offer Hartenstein more money annually than the Knicks can. I think the Knicks are capped out at around 17.5 million due to having only his early bird rights. And so that could be a tricky situation.
Right.
What will Isaiah Hartenstein's priorities be? Is it to get as much money as he can, or to get something good, reasonable, and stay with the team that he has chemistry with? I think ultimately he will re-sign with the Knicks and they can move forward there. OG Anunoby is contract extension eligible. I don't expect him to go anywhere. I think they will pay him and pay him handsomely. And so those are the top three moves that I expect the Knicks to make. And then on the trade front, you never know who that star player, like, you never know who's going to be available.
Right.
And last year was Damian Lillard. Year before that, it was Donovan Mitchell. Like, you just never know who's going to be there. I think the Knicks will keep their options open in terms of potentially making a play for a splash candidate. But I would also look at smaller OG Anunoby type of moves that can help move the needle for this team. A guy who I'm looking at right now is a DeJounte Murray to acquire via trade. Someone who can help play make. He can help run that bench unit, that second unit. He can log more minutes as the Knicks look for more depth to their bench. I think he could be a potential trade candidate there. The Knicks also have 2 draft picks, the 24th and the 25th pick. They should also have the mid-level exception to use, which is about $12.5 million. Could that go to a guy like maybe a Tyus Jones to help be a backup point guard for them? That's certainly an area of need. And so if the big star player is not available, I think the Knicks will look to make doubles, triples, and even singles to help shore up the depth on the bench.
Going to your point about DeJounte Murray, do you think him and Jalen Brunson can coexist? Because Jalen Brunson really is like a ball dominant guy as well. Like,
Yeah,
we see DeJounte Murray playing in Atlanta right now with Trae Young, and like that hasn't been like, they haven't gotten like a lot of success that they like predicted with that backcourt. So do you think he can coexist with another ball dominant guard with Jalen Brunson in New York?
hasn't shown it yet. He's shown that whenever he does have the ball in his hands as the guy, just like his all-star year with the Spurs, and when Trae Young was absent from the Hawks with the injury, DeJounte Murray shows that he can flourish.
Right.
So they would have to make that work. I'd hope that, wishful thinking on my part, but if a guy like a DeJounte Murray says, hey, I will sacrifice, come off the bench, and just be that sixth man that this team really needs, I think the Knicks can truly thrive there. He did shoot the ball a little bit better last year.
Right.
His catch and shoot numbers aren't the greatest, and so there is reason to be concerned there. But when you think of his potential as a above average on-ball defender, bring some athleticism to this team, his ability to shoot in the mid-range, the wingspan, things of that nature, I still think he can help with this team. And if push comes to shove, you have a Dante DiVincenzo who you can slot him in as a starter, as a bench player. He was electric this year for the Knicks, a highly efficient shooter on high volume. Dante DiVincenzo was a great pickup by them. So you still have him where you can slot him in as a starter or a bench player. So I think it'd be a gamble that would be worthwhile. Because if you look at the competition, I talked about this on my show yesterday, the Boston Celtics aren't going anywhere for a little while.
Right.
And the Knicks, even though they have some depth, they picked up some good pieces. I think they still need a little bit more in the talent department. And so you're going to have to take a chance. Fit is ideal, but I think you also need to take a chance on some talent. And I would be willing to do that for DeJounte Murray, given the assets that the Knicks have to play with.
That is true. So what do you think about the Julius Randle situation? I've heard a lot of things going into this offseason. Do you guys trade? Do the Knicks trade him? You have all those picks at the Knicks have all those picks at their disposal as well. Do they go all in for a whale this summer and trade Julius Randle?
If a worthwhile whale is out there, yeah, I would. I think the Knicks should. But there's only so many that I would consider moving him for, right? Like if hell freezes over and Giannis says, you know what, I'm going to bail on this Milwaukee experiment. Yeah, I would trade Julius Randle in a heartbeat. If Kevin Durant from Phoenix says, hey, I'm not having fun here anymore, I want to move on again. I know some fans wouldn't. I would make that move. I think KD would be perfect here for the Knicks. But other than that, no, I think the Knicks should run it back with Julius Randle. I want to see the January New York Knicks team, the team that went 14-2 in January. I want to see what that team can do together in the postseason. We saw a lot of great things from them from an offensive standpoint, from a net rating standpoint, especially on the heels of the OG Anunoby trade. I really want to see if Julius Randle can prove that he can be an excellent postseason performer here for the Knicks. And so unless there's a big splash to make using him as a trade asset, the Knicks should keep him and run it back with this big three that they have right now.
That January New York Knicks team, I actually think like a healthy Knicks team would actually be in the finals right now, in my opinion. They match up perfectly with the Boston Celtics. They have the size, they have the wings, they have the speed, they have the defensive capability to match up with Tatum and Brown, the scoring in the backcourt. Like, I really thought like a healthy New York Knicks team as the 2 seed beats Indiana, moves on to play Boston in the conference finals, and now we'd probably see them in the finals against the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, I mean Boston's tough, man. Watching them in this finals, they are deep 1 through 5. This
Right.
is the team that we saw in the regular season, and they're not just getting it done on the offensive end, defensively.
Defensively.
Even to me, even more impressive. When you talk about Derek White and Drew Holiday, they're all defense backcourt. Brown and Tatum playing good defense. They getting some solid rim protection, and they're a versatile team. So it's a tough team to beat right now. They're in the commanding seat in the NBA Finals. I expect them to win, but that is the bar right now that the Knicks need to look up to and hopefully surpass in the coming years.
A lot of people are like giving Kyrie a lot of garbage and like a lot of harassment in the media right now for not being aggressive. Like, yeah, this isn't like what we're used to seeing from Kyrie, but like you gotta understand at the end of the day, they're not letting him go one-on-one from the wing, like how he likes to break down his defender, get to the rim, get into his mid-range game. No, they're sending 2 guys at him on every pick and roll. They're blitzing him. Jalen Brown especially is stepping up to the challenge,
Big time.
guarding Kyrie Irving, Drew Holiday. Like it's too many like great on-ball defenders, I feel like, on that team that can just switch on to Kyrie, and it's like exhausting to try and get around them. And then who are you meeting at the rim? Porzingis, Al Horford, Tatum is coming over from the help. Like it's a lot, I feel like, to put on the shoulders of just those 2 guys, Luka and Kyrie. But in order for them to win, I feel like they're both going to need to like shoot the lights out in order for them to win that game 3. What do you think?
Mavs have no margin for error. If Kyrie's not on point, they're not going to win.
Right.
Kyrie and Luka damn near have to average close to 60 points a game for them to have a chance. They just don't have that depth that the Celtics have behind them to compensate for them not for one of those guys to have an off night. Because with the Celtics, they can hit you 1 through 5. You know, look at the Jason Tatum conversation right now. Everybody's talking about, oh man, his shooting percentage is so low.
He
And I'm
doesn't
on
need
the
to
other
do.
side saying, hey, this is a guy making winning plays. Yeah, 12 assists in game 2.
Right.
He's making all the right plays. Him driving to the rim is putting so much pressure on Dallas. It's forcing them into rotations, which allows them to find open shooters. That's the name of the game. That's the name of
Right.
basketball. So a lot of people are expecting him to perform or score as a top 5 guy, but Jason Tatum is just doing his job. For the Mavericks, though, Kyrie has to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Luka Doncic has to do that, or else they don't have a shot because the Celtics just come at you in waves. And so, you know, Kyrie has a tall order. You got to get past Drew Holiday. If you get past Drew, you might have to get past Jalen Brown. Yeah, and so in those limited opportunities, he's got to knock down those open shots that he would usually make in isolation. And hopefully in game 3, he has to get out to a hot start, especially in the first quarter, set a good tone for them, and then we'll see how the Mavs can rally from there.
The Mavs I feel like, are really suffering because they don't get a lot of those driving kick 3 opportunities as they were in the first 3 rounds of the NBA playoffs. Like usually a guy would like, instead of like stunting like what the Celtics are doing, they're kind of like stunning from that corner and like staying at home.
Stay
So
at
like
home.
so that PJ Washington and Derrick Jones Jr., they don't get those like corner 3 opportunities. They're letting Luka or Kyrie drive into the help, and then the one guy is just staying at home with them, and they're forcing them to take like tough fall away fadeaways from like the mid range, which isn't like that high percentage of a shot because the shot clock is winding down too at the same time, I feel like. But so Celtics are making it really tough on them. But in my opinion, like, yeah, I'm not a Celtics fan, but like I'm a fan of good basketball at the end of the day. And yeah, going back to your point about what Jason Tatum is doing, you can impact the basketball game in many more ways than just scoring. Like, yeah, we're so used to seeing Jason Tatum go out there and drop like 30 something points or like even high 20s on a nightly basis. But like for him to like really show his playmaking ability on the biggest stage in the world, 12 assists, that's really, and your team win down the stretch of like a pivotal game two to go up 2-0 in the NBA Finals. I feel like that shows like he's a winning player at the end of the day.
I mean, look, he had to do that last year, the year before that, the year before that. He had to be that guy.
Right.
This year, this is why Brad Stevens went out and got Drew Holiday to be that adult in the room, to get Porzingis, who can be a guy who can take pressure off of Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown. Why? Because what were their weaknesses going into this? Their clutch decision making, playmaking, and scoring in crunch time. Now they don't have to take all of that on their shoulders. They have help now. And by the way, you got a wild card in Derek White, who does everything by the details, is all over the court, all the hustle plays, who can get you second chance opportunities, might hit a three, or as he did in game two, seals the game with a clutch block on PJ Washington. So you have help on both ends of the floor where you don't have to put so much on Tatum and Brown.
On top of it, their bench as well. The shooting of Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser off the bench has been insane for them. Their ability to space the floor and even like get it done on the defensive end as well. Like Sam Hauser might not be like the best like on-ball perimeter defender, but like if you see him coming over in the help or even like clogging things up in the lane with his length and ability to like block shots and contest shots, I feel like that's amazing as well. Peyton Pritchard, we saw him with that big half-court heave at the end to like when you saw like the Mavs and Kyrie kind of gaining a little bit momentum, you see him make that shot and take the momentum right back and like push the Celtics to obviously like blow the game open in the fourth quarter. I thought that was really amazing as well.
Yeah, those guys, especially Pritchard, man, he's been playing like a dog, and you don't want on a team like that where they're so good on both ends. You don't want to be the guy holding everybody back, right? So
Right.
those guys there play by that core, that 5 or 6 guys. It elevates everybody else. You have to play to that level, or you might not play. So they've done a good job in Pritchard and Hauser for the most part all year in just being that supporting cast that Boston needs, because behind them, they don't have that much depth behind them, but they're so solid in their front six that they don't need much. They just need those guys to come in, knock down a couple shots, play some defense, and then you can go back to one of your starting 5 for sure.
In your opinion, if this let's say the Celtics go and win the NBA championship, who is your finals MVP?
Well, through 2, I would go with Drew Holiday. I think Jalen Brown can win it as well,
That's
but
what
it's
I
still
was gonna
early.
say.
It's still early, right? Like the Mavs go out there and win in game 3 or game 4. Hey, you just never know. My pick was Celtics in 7. I think they could wrap it up earlier, but you just never know. Right now, I would say Holiday and then Brown for the MVP.
Yeah, most definitely. So what I asked like all my guests that I've had on my show as my final question, I asked them about like what their future aspirations for their career are. So going forward, what are your future aspirations for your career?
Yeah, so as I said, this has been 7 years now for Knicks Fan TV for the NBA Report. This is going to be year 2, and we're going to continue making content and bringing value to the fans along that light. As I said, we have Knicks Fan TV, we have the NBA Report, we have a couple other members in our network right now, like Jake Asman doing tremendous work covering the New York Jets. We have Chicago Bulls Central my guy Hayes. He's in our network as well, covering the Bulls, and so along the journey, we're going to continue to evaluate and draft, I guess, scout, evaluate, and draft some of the top talent that are in similar veins to Knicks Fan TV, man, bringing value to the fans, for the fans, by the fans movement, professional broadcasters and content creators, and continue to build that under the network, the Fanchise Sports Network. That is what we are working on right now. So in the early stages of that process, but as I mentioned to you earlier in this interview, with consistency and taking small actions each day, you'll see the fruits of your labor over time, but you have to be in it. That's the biggest part of the journey, is the small steps that you take to build something amazing.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today, CP, dropping those gems. I'm really looking forward to meeting you in person this summer at SBC and learning more from you. And just thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk to you today.
Ashton, likewise, man. I'll see you out there in Vegas, man.
Thanks for listening to Gen Z Hoops. Make sure to follow, like, and subscribe on Instagram, LinkedIn, and all major social media platforms at Gen Z Hoops. You can tune in and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and every other podcast platform on the planet. Get ready for the next episode.